I'm Derrick Dukart, live out by Manning, which is north of Dickinson. So I'll start off like who we are and what we've been using for technology. Everything has to go back to our roots, both our past and present and our future. We were founded in 1908 by my great-grandfather. We took over their place. My grandpa actually took over his place. He was one of 13 kids. And then my mom grew up there, and then my dad and her took over the place, and now we're the fourth or third generation, I guess. They engaged in the farming practices of what they knew back then, which was totally different skill set than what we have now. They farmed with tractor or horsepower. Now we have horsepower in the form of 4 rubber wheels on the ground. They were completely dependent upon their resources that they had. They probably didn't go to the grocery store or Walmart once a week or twice in one day. They raised everything from milk cows to beef to chickens, turkeys, and whatnot. They raised a family, and they acquired the property that we have today. Presently, the operation is run or managed by my family. We acquired the operation in 2000. Anyway, so we encompass about 6,000 acres of owned, rented, and we have about 120-mile range of real estate. We have land here down by Bismarck-Mandan, and then at home. We are a very diverse operation of both crops and livestock. We have forage, winter wheat, oats, spring wheat, corn, whatever wants to grow in the given year. We are an Angus and cattle, black Angus and red Angus cattle operation. My kids and my wife have a 1 or 2 goats times 50. Some days they're at like 60 head of goats right now. They raise a Savannah breed of goats. We have a yearling operation along with forage tested 18-month-old bulls. This is my family. You're right to my left. My youngest son, Jude, he's a junior in college. My middle son, Ian, he works for McDonald's Solaires down here in Bismarck. My daughter, Iris, is in her 3rd year of teaching ag education up in Mulhall. Myself, my wife, my partner for the last 28 years. And then my parents, Doug and Sandy, they're also a part of our operation. Technology that we have used. We've been a part of the 711X program since 2022. We implement both their EID tags along with their water sensors. This is the 711X webpage, their opening page. This is the mobile app. It's either mobile or web-based app or cell phone app, I guess. Like I said, we've been a part of that since 2021 when we first started using the app. And then we started using the GPS tags in 2022. In 22, we started doing some of their beta testing. They'd give us we paid for the tags, but we'd give all their data back to them on tag retention, what we saw, if things broke or whatnot. So the tags, this is one of our bulls. You can see up in his ear right there. Is one of the GPS tags. So there are the tags up on the picture. I got one of the newer versions up here. So this is the solar panel that gets the power to the tag. On the back side, it's a 2-pin design. There's a monitor in the middle for heart rate. And then basically all the components are up inside. This is, I can't remember what version this is, but it's been changed quite a few times, and I think they're upgrading it again. We found some issues with it here this summer, and they actually knew about it before I even told them, but they are solar powered. They connect to any cellular network, and currently now they are satellite based. There's no antennas and no base station is required. So the GPS tracking on the system, it'll give us an out of fence alert as long as you set up in your app uh, the fence or the boundaries of where you want the bull. And if you put the bull into that pasture, if you don't put him in the pasture, you'll never know if he's out. Also, I think right now on my phone, I think I got 54 pastures. It's a little daunting to put tags into a pasture, but the system is getting better with every passing day. And I'm a data analyst, a data inputter, and then sometimes I just pass it on to my kids, and they can figure it out too, better than I can. You can find a lost animal or a tag. In the picture there, you can see a tag that fell out of the animal. There's actually a tool on your phone. It's like a little Geiger counter, I call it. And if you put it up to your belly and you turn it on, and you can walk within 5 feet of your tag, sometimes right above it. It's pretty handy if we have some pretty rough country down here by New Salem, a lot of trees, so we lose tags, not regularly, but in the early years we lost quite a few, and we found them. You also can view your herd moving via the kind of the grazing map or heat map. So every time that animal checks in with the satellite, it'll give a pinpoint where that animal is in your pasture, and then it tells you that where that animal was probably grazing or ruminating or resting. The location of the animals, where they're at on your farm or ranch, and then you can also track historical animal movement. And I was hoping to show a little bit of that, but it wasn't downloading the way I wanted it to last night. And then the heat maps or grazing maps. Some of the updates you can see a lot of these have been updated already. If you look, the kind of the red and the blue, that's the grazing map or the heat map that'll show up on your app or your web-based computer. They have also got they've come out with the estrus alert, so you can put it into your female cows, and it'll actually tell you when that cow is in heat. You still got to do a little bit of ranch work just to verify that she's been in heat. We had it in a few cows this year, and they notified me that she was in heat, and she was. I went out to make sure, and then verified it through the app. They will be coming out with a calving detection. Primarily, we just have it in our bulls. We will probably put it into a few cows here this next year, and then we'll see how it works. The bull mounting data is also part of that, and I'll show a little bit of that here in a little bit. High activity or no movement. High activity would be if somebody would steal your animal, put it in a trailer, take it down the interstate at 75 miles an hour. I think if it goes over 35 miles an hour, it alerts us, and it does work. I forgot to turn the tag off when I load a bull, and it'll ding from Bismarck all the way to Dickinson, and tell me that and it'll actually even show the tag on the highway or interstate. It's pretty cool. Or no movement. If you have an animal that is injured, falls off a cliff into a sinkhole, it'll alert you that that animal is in distress or needs help. And there's algorithms that go through all this that go into some of this data that is collected. So these are some of the pictures through the years. The bull the red bull on the side there. You can see the solar panel is turned upside down. We're putting these tags into probably some of the roughest animals in the world to try to keep a tag in. If you've had a bull in your pasture, I'm sure every bull that you have has a tag in it, right? The original tag that it came with, maybe, but maybe not. And this bull, he's probably one of the hardest bulls to keep a tag in, but it still works. And that was here from this summer. And then the bull on the black bull, he had it in pretty much all summer long too. So this is actually some of the reports that you can actually generate through the app. You can see this is actually one of our pastures. This was three young bulls. in the pasture from this summer. So this is a 30-day window or date range, I should say, from the day I turned out, and I just went 30 days. So if you look on top, you can actually see they actually traveled 189 miles total, 3.5 million steps. They had a total of 841 mounts, 3 animals, 63 miles traveling, I can't remember what that, 1.9 million, and then average mounts was 200. So this was a 2-year-old bull here, so he was just right up around 600 mounts for that 30-day period. And then in the blue was his steps. This bull was a yearling, typical yearling. We've seen this a couple of times where they just don't do much. Still had about 100 mounts, a lot of steps, typical yearling. This was actually a 3-year-old bull, but his tag was only dangling by one button, so some of that data is skewed. There was a 4th bull in there over here, but I can't get that data to come up for whatever reason. But this is one of the productivity reports that you can see through the app. This was another bull that we had, just a single pasture, just a different look on the mounting data. So day 1, pretty much down to 0. If you were to bring this up on a computer, you can actually, hover over this point right here, and it'll tell you the day and the mounts for the day. So the most mounts he had in one day was about 12, and then according to our ultrasound data that we did here last week, this period was about, I think, 60 some days or 67 days right in here. And the other bull that was in that pasture too, that's where most of our cattle were getting bred, and then it slacked off towards the end. Then he lost his tag, actually tore the solar panel right off. So we're going to talk about the good and the bad. We've gone through the whole gamut. This was actually one of the original tags. It was a one-piece design. The solar panel was actually built right into the tag front part. We lost most of those tags just due to the fact when you put a single dangle tag, and there was some weight to it, but over time it would just sway back and forth and just slowly work its way out of the ear. It would heal as it was working its way down, but we lost some of those tags. They're still good tags. It was just we had some issues. This is actually a tag. When you have multiple bulls in a pasture, they tend to fight. This is actually basically the processor of the whole tag. It's about 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch. I blew the picture up so you could see it. I took about 3 hours to find this tag. It was still communicating to me on my tag finder, but it was hiding under a tree, and that's what I found. The app took me right within 5 feet, but I had to do a lot of searching to find that. And then the little button tag in here, basically it's like an EID tag. It's called their XT Light tag. It is just GPS enabled and Bluetooth. You can put it in every animal. If you brought the animals into this room and you click on your app, and it'll actually count the tags that are in the room. So if you had 100 tags or 100 animals in the room, you thought you brought 100 in, but there's only 99 show up, you're missing one. And it actually pairs with the XT Pro tag that they have. We got a few out. They're not solar powered. They got about a 3-year shelf life on them. We're still toying. They're about $17-18, I think, or something like that. The XT Pro tag is, I think, $175 as of the other day when I looked. So a little bit of the health monitoring. You get your step count, you get your heart rate, your mounting data if it's assigned to a bull, estrus detection, calving detection, high speed, and no movement, which I talked about a little bit before. The water sensor, we've had it now for 4 years now. We're going on 4. So it's it actually checks in with the tag. It's solar powered, and then it's got a monitoring little deal on the bottom of the tank. So it'll measure water temperature, water height. You can actually put it into your app, and then you can set limits on how high or low, or if it's cold out, you want to know when it freezes. We've also used the Gallagher sensor, and then we implement a lot of barn owl cameras just so we actually have a picture of the water tank. A few more of the pictures of the bulls that we have with the tags in them. Just what we've been doing. Our future, we've actually been using their EID system. We won every yearling heifer this year got a button tag when we did Bangs vaccinating. So they're the 840 tags that the vet puts out. We can actually implement them into our program. We scan them in, they're assigned to the animal, and then we do everything chute side. So when we were preg checking, we were hoping to get a video when we were preg checking. So I scan the heifer, and it automatically brings that animal up on the computer. And then when the vet says bred or open, we can put bred, number of days, and it automatically kicks out a calving date or potential calving date for that animal. And then at the same time, we can count if we're missing something. There's a lot of components to the app. I haven't got through it all because there's just a lot of stuff there. It does cost a little bit, so much a year. But right now, like on my homepage for my app, I know how many steers I have, how many bull calves, how many heifer calves, yearlings, and then I can keep a track of all my vaccines that I give to the calves. Anything that you can think of, it's there. Body condition score to hoof score to udder score. There's a lot of data, a lot of things that are good about the app. But with that, I think my time is just about up, so I'll turn it over to Kurt.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Yeah, I'm Kurt Swenson. My wife and I live on her home farm and ranch south of Beulah, about an hour northwest of here. Just from a historical perspective, our farm and ranch has been around for quite a while. It has been in a pulled Hereford operation for much of its legacy. Norman Smith is my wife's dad, and it was his grandparents that ultimately had acquired the land in 1912 from the railroad, and that family has been there ever since and in that area. In 1958, they brought up some of the Herefords from Nebraska and started a registered and commercial operation with pulled Herefords, and that continued all the way through 2017 with some of our animals. Faye's dad actually ended up passing away in 1987, and her mom ended up taking over the ranch. And if you can imagine the tough North Dakota ranch lady, she's the epitome of that. And I am absolutely blessed to get to live next to her. She's still with us in the original house that my wife grew up in, and we're just across the way from her. So we're very fortunate in that. And we brought that Hereford operation through 2017, and then with our youngest boy graduating from high school and going off to Fargo for college, and I was commuting back and forth to Brookings, South Dakota, building a second business down there. We just really couldn't find a feasible way for us to continue ranching. And so we ended up selling the cattle at that time in 2017. And honestly, at that point, I thought we were going to be done. So fast forward to today, one of our neighbors had been renting the ranch lands out, and him and his wife. Last summer, she had a pretty unfortunate event and passed away. And so our best laid plans of mice and men has brought us back to the cattle business again. And so we're unfortunate how we got here, but we're happy to be here and helping him out and running our own cattle. So combined, last year we had about 200 cow-calf pair, mostly an Angus and Angus mix. And all of that being done with our family and our neighbor who has other businesses as well. So we run roughly about 2,700 acres in Oliver. We're in the far western edge of Oliver County, and some land in Mercer County, as you can see on the screen. And we have about 1,600 acres that we run on pasture and hay ground. So we are very excited. 2025 for us is a year of return of the Herefords. So we've got our registered herd getting built back up, and those are some of the first animals that came to us this year. So my mother-in-law is absolutely ecstatic to have those Herefords back on the ranch. Not that we're partial to one brand or another, as you can tell. Okay, so why virtual fence? Last year when we ended up helping our neighbor out, we were feeding his cattle into the winter, both at his place and in our place. And I said, there's got to be a better way to do this. And one of the things that I'd been, just learning a lot about was how we can maybe restore or heal some of the old cropland that was turned into pasture land. And so we looked at utilizing bale grazing to do that. And so we experimented with that in a couple different methods. And what I learned from that is because of our, off the farm occupations and businesses that we have, it just really wasn't necessarily feasible for us to do that full time. So, and move polywire, move wire and things like that ourselves. So I was thinking, virtual fence might be a pretty good tool for that. The other thing that we've been directionally moving, both with our renter before we were back involved in the business, was directionally moving towards a higher density stocking, shorter duration, longer rest period type grazing. We're not to the every 24 hours type moves that was talked about earlier, but we are definitely on the, well within a week, every few days we're moving cows and exposing them to new grass. We contemplated, could virtual fencing help us to be more profitable? Is there a way that we can use the technology to both, get better gain on the calves that are as they're growing and, essentially creep feeding beyond where the cows are contained? And can it help improve our stocking density? So those were some of the questions that were on our mind at that time. I really enjoy the outdoors as well, and our family does. And one of the things on our minds also is could we use virtual fence, graze in a way that not only helped us with profitability, but also helped benefit the wildlife and specifically upland nesting or upland grassland nesting birds. And those for North Dakota, to us are meadowlarks, and it could be the sharp-tailed grouse or the Hungarian partridge pheasants, you name it. But they coincide and work really well with cattle, and we're wondering, could this help us improve the results for them as well? So in understanding the technology, we did a bunch of research on the different brands that were out there at the time, and this is roughly a year ago or just under a year ago while we were out there. And looked at all of them. And, the things that we prioritized was, first of all, I didn't want to have batteries, and I'm not here to be an advertisement for Halter. I'm just helping you with kind of what our mindset was when we went through the selection process. And so we didn't want to have to replace batteries, and we wanted something that could work well in the winter. And as everybody knows, battery lives shorten in the winter. And although these are solar powered, we were able to work through with Halter in that process and actually contractually guaranteed based on our latitude and the sunlight hours available in the winter that they would be effective for winter bale grazing and moving the cattle through that process. The second one for me was I did want to line up, if we're making a financial investment in this technology, I wanted to work with a company that had scale and the ability to scale in this emerging market. And so at the time, there were roughly about 400,000 collars deployed worldwide, and most of that being in the dairy industry in New Zealand. But they were entering and maybe were a year or so plus into the U.S. markets at that time. And I think they're about over 500,000 now. And they had just completed a Series A funding round that led them to over $1 billion in market cap. So I just looked at them as they're probably here to stay, significant resources and deployments. One of the things that we struggle with where we're at is we've got some pretty good drainages and maybe some sketchy cell phone service or non-existent cell phone service in some of our drainages. So we didn't want to rely solely on cell phone for communications to the collars. And so we wanted to make sure that we had something that had a radio signal. And so Halter answered that for us with their radio towers, which I'll show you in a little bit. And they offered a lease model to us, and the versus us putting all the money down up front and buying the collars and owning the collars. The lease model essentially was less money up front for us, but also then they're fully warranted during that lease period. And if something were to go bad with them, they just send us a new collar. And honestly, we haven't had any go bad. But that's what the contract writes. And then I didn't want to have to sit in front of my computer and do this. I wanted to be able to do it all from my phone. And Halter has gone 100% that way. There is no computer app for you to use. It's 100% on your phone. And so, a couple months ago, I was down in Alabama for some business. And I woke up in my hotel room and I moved the cows from Alabama from my phone, just as simple as that. So that it's been, they fit the bill for what we were looking for. And again, I'm not here to say they're above and beyond any of the other brands. And I think we'll hear a little bit more about that, but that's what was, in our minds when we were evaluating the different brands. So Halter, and I actually brought one of the collars. I did wipe the manure off of it. This came off of one of the steers here recently. We had it on. But up on the screen, what you'll see is there are a couple of speakers that are embedded. And so this sits on the back or the neck of the cow. And the speakers will essentially provide an audible cue. So I'll talk about how that works. It's GPS enabled, so you get live locations, so I can look on my phone at any time and see where the cows are at. And it does have an LED light function here, which provides some nice things that I'll show you here in a little bit. So the things that it does for the cow, essentially it provides audible cues. So once you set up your virtual fence, and if the cow is approaching that fence line or that virtual fence line, it will, if it needs to turn to the right, it'll essentially beep in their left ear and the cow will go like that and turn to their right. If it needs to go to the left, same thing, it'll beep in their right ear and it essentially, in my mind, steer the cow. I'm sure there's much more technical terms for what's going on, but it steers the cow to stay within the virtual fence boundaries. When I open up a new grass for grazing within their grazing area, it gives a vibratory cue for them so that once they're pointed in the direction of that new grass, it essentially says, "Hey, dummy, there's new grass up there," and it will help move them towards that new fresh grass area. And then, if the cow doesn't behave and it likes to go outside and stay outside the boundaries, eventually it will get an electric stimulation through the collar. And it's obviously not as strong as an electric fence would be, but it does get their attention. And honestly, we've had 100% compliance. We haven't had really any issues. Every time we've noticed a cow was outside of the boundary, it was shortly thereafter steered back inside the virtual fence boundary. So just to talk a little bit, what is it like to go through the process with Halter? So the very first thing is the Halter rep that I got connected with came and did a site analysis, or not came and did, but we worked remotely to do a site analysis where they looked at your land, your topography, what pieces you wanted to run the cattle on. And then they looked at their technology with the towers that they have and decided how many towers, what type of towers, where to place them, things like that. And then they went through a proposal and contracting phase where, it outlined the costs, which obviously are very important, and who's responsible for what in the relationship. And as I mentioned briefly before, but I was kind of a little bit of a stickler on them, and they worked to change the contract for me where they would contractually guarantee that winter effectiveness for us, because that was really why we started wanting to go here in the first place. So then they'll ship the collars out to you. And just all of a sudden trucks start arriving. You got collars and towers coming at you. And then you as the rancher will end up sending them a shape file, like off an Onyx app, or an app that allows you to send them where your fences are, where your gates are, where your water sources are, so that they can load that then into the app on your, so that your phone accesses. You, as the rancher, you install the towers. It's not that big of a deal. It's just sticking an 8 to 10 inch post in the ground, 4 foot above grade. That takes about 1 to 2 hours. And in that little video clip I showed, my son and I went out and did it. The first one took us an hour and a half, because you always screw up and you make a mistake and all that, and that was on us. The second one took us 45 minutes. It's really simple to do once you got the post in the ground. And they send you extremely detailed instructions, and they send you every tool you need down to the individual sockets that you need for leveling the towers and everything. So that worked really good. And then they are solar powered as well. And then we went through a training and onboarding process. So we were assigned to an onboarding lead. They sent us documentation on things that we could walk through online, essentially training materials with a test and questions and all that kind of stuff, just to help to see if you really understand it. And it was really pretty intuitive, honestly. And you download the app, and then you assign who wants to be an administrator, and then you can share it with everybody in your operation. You don't pay anything more to share it with all those people. You just, I can share it with our son, I can share it with our neighbor, I can share it with my wife, whoever. They don't care how many people you share it with. So then, just to walk you through what the app looks like, this is actually a screenshot of my phone, and it'll start moving here, but there's 4 tabs on the bottom. And you'll see, it's hard to see on the screen, but there's a live tab and a herd tab, and grazings and a more tab. And I just walked through all those real quickly, but I'm going to zooming in here. And this is 2 of the herds that we have. Top one's got 46 collars. The bottom one's got 26 in it right now. The dark white is the virtual fence, and then the lighter white lines are the hard fences that we have. And so on this one, we're grazing, and all the dots are obviously where the cows are at the time when I recorded my phone. And so you can watch them and track them where they're going. And what I wanted to do is to show you how easy it was on the app to actually change the virtual fence boundary. So here I go in and I essentially tapped on the virtual fence, and I can use the existing virtual fence as a template to set a new break or a new grazing area. And so I'm doing that, and then I'll touch that lower right one, and I'll just bring it down and move it where I want it. And then I'll go and I'll touch the left one. Of course, I hit the wrong one here when I was recording, and I got to put it back. But then I'll get that lower left one, and I'll move it down. And so that advances the cows to a new area where they haven't grazed yet. And I could save that at that point, but I want to move that back fence also, right? So I keep them in roughly the same stock density in that area. So I'll move the north end of it down to keep roughly the same acreage on where they're at. And then you end up saving it, and then ultimately you will schedule a shift. And you can schedule the shift to be a time in the future, and it'll show that here in a second. On just 1 second, it'll probably show that you can schedule it out for future days and whatever time you want the cows to be able to move into that new grazing. So I just pick what day and what time, or I can shift it right then and there. And I do that by holding a little red button down for like 3 seconds. And then within 15 minutes, the cows have received that signal, and the new fence boundary is set up, and it signals the cow, starts signaling the cows that there's fresh grass. So that's what we just did there. It literally takes, I can do it in probably 30 seconds typically to set up a new grazing area for them. Also, you can look deeper into each of the cows or each of the collars that you have out there. So you can pause it. I mentioned the LED light. You can actually trigger it to be red, blue, green, or yellow, which is really nice when you're trying to identify a certain cow at night and it's flashing a yellow light at you. So that's pretty special. You can change an ear tag number for whatever reason if you wanted to, or you can edit nicknames if you got a special name for them, those types of things. So pretty functional. Not going through everything here, but you can also see if the battery life is maintaining well with the sunlight conditions, when it last communicated with the towers. Is it synchronized? Is it running the latest software version on that tower or on that collar and all that? And then you can replace a collar with that cow, and if you change collars for some reason, or unassign a collar. Like we sold a couple steers that we had them on, so I had to unassign the collars from that herd essentially and from those cows. So that's kind of the rundown, real quick and dirty on the app. There's more features to that, but those are some of the things that we use most of the time. And then, so the obvious question is, what does it cost? And that's, I'm sure, on your mind. So I put a little table together here. And so we did a contract for 100 collars, and those collars are $66 per year per collar. And you do pay a cell phone service each year, and that's regardless of how many towers you have. It's a $600 per year fee, because the cell phones communicate with the towers send a radio signal back and forth to the collars, and then towers you pay up front, and they're $4,500 a piece. So if you average that out on a 4-year life cycle of the lease, it's about $95 a collar per year. But we're looking this year to essentially go to 200 cows, and just increasing that and spreading those fixed costs out, it comes down to about $80 per collar per year. So in my mind, it's not so much about what does it cost. It's really about what is the value that you're receiving for your operation through the use of the collars. And so I just wanted to share with you a little bit about our results so far. And for those of you that were Olympic fans in 2024, this is Suni Lee, our medal gymnastic lady from the U.S. She will do all sorts of gymnastics to get cattle cubes from you. So we collared 28 cows in June of this year, and 28 cows and yearlings, actually. And then we collared another group of 47 in July. And it literally takes a minute or less to put the collars on. You put it on, you get it to the right fit so that there's, it's not too tight, not too loose, and there's a method to do that. And then, you scan the collar with your phone, you put in your tag number, and you're done. So within under a minute, every collar can go on and it's functional. We did not collar the bulls for obvious reasons. We want the bulls to feel like they can roam freely, do what they need to do, not be affected by the collar and the stimulations, the signals that it can provide. I'm not sure if that's everybody's philosophy, but that was ours. And then we didn't do the first year calves, just because they're too small and the collars would be too big for them and they grow too quickly. You'd have to be adjusting them if they did fit to begin with. So the learnings that we've had, overall, we've been very pleased with it. Quite honestly, really pleased. The training went really well. We were assigned an individual. We had somebody that could walk us through every step of it and be available, calling them on Sunday mornings and talking to them. And it was just a really easy process to go through the training. The tower installation I mentioned couldn't have been more simple. They give you everything you need. You just have to bring your little ratchet driver, and that's really all you're doing once you got the post in. The collaring was quick. It was simple. No issues with it. Collar adjustments, we did go through on the yearlings about 2.5 months into it. We ran them through the chute again and checked the fit of the collar. Some of them we adjusted and made a little bit looser, but that was really the only adjustments we've done. They have a chat function on the app, and we have 24/7. They're headquartered and originated out of New Zealand. Obviously, you can imagine they've got people on staff at 2 a.m. at our time. So any time of the day or night, 7 days a week, I can get a hold of somebody if I have an issue and I don't know how to do something or just have questions. They're been very responsive. The phone app is really intuitive, I mentioned. And I guess if I could change one thing, what I've asked them to do is to do an exclusion zone function. So if we've got this rectangular grazing area that they're in, but I've maybe got a wetland I want them to stay out of, or I've got an area where they've grazed off the top of a hill because they like the taste of it really well, and I want them to stay off of that but have access to everything else. It doesn't work the best for that. You can kind of jerry rig it once in a while depending on the shape of things, but I'm hopeful that they will be working on the exclusion zone function. So with that, what's next for us? We're going to demonstrate the effectiveness during winter this year. We haven't been through winter yet, and we're optimistic, and hopefully the low sunlight will allow us to do the bale grazing practices that we're interested in. We're going to change out the collars actually in November. We're being sent all new collars under our lease agreement, and they have just the latest version. And my understanding is they have a little bit longer battery life and things like that. So, they're giving those to us as free within the lease that we have. And we're actually evaluating full herd utilization and a couple more towers to reach some of the further out pastures that we run on. And actually, coincidentally, with Kevin, we are looking at some research potential with NDSU, looking at the profitability and the wildlife benefits to changing grazing practices enabled through virtual fencing. And that isn't locked in yet, but we're taking a look at that. So with that, I'm going to wrap up. My cell phone's there. I'll be around for a while. Happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thanks.
So, for those of you who know me, I'm the Extension Rangeland Management Specialist and Director of Central Grasslands. But I got elevated today to a producer. I've never been elevated to producer, so it was a good day today. So I get a chance to talk about virtual fence as well, and we've been doing vents for the last 3 years. We brought virtual fence to North Dakota in 2022. I think we were the first ones to bring it here to test it. And of course, at the time, the only one that was available in the market was vents. And so we've been using vents. That's been a flaw in our design because I would love to test other products, but we've been only using vents. And so we have a lot of partners in this. So in reality, 2025, we ran virtual fence on 27 different herds, over 400 cattle throughout the state, from the southwest to the south central to even up north of Dickinson and at Fargo. So we've covered the gamut for the state. And the idea for us is, can we look at a larger scale? Our big question is the efficacy of the technology, irrelevant of the system you're using. How effective is it? So for producers, they want to know, 1, does it work? 2, what's the cost? Then 3, how does it work? Kurt did a great job of describing how virtual fence works, and I'm not going to go into that. So I have a really short PowerPoint. My goal is just to introduce you to what we're doing. So if you look at today, there's 4 companies in the market today. Vence was the first one here. Gallagher actually came in 2024, and Halter and No Fence came in 2025. South Dakota's been using No Fence for probably about the same, also 3 years on sheep. No Fence is the only one available today in the market for sheep, and the rest of them are all working well for cattle. They all have their strengths, and they all have their weaknesses. For me, I get a chance to see a lot of them because I give a lot of talks on virtual fence. And I've been saying, last year, I think I said virtual fence was sitting at about an iPhone 6. I think today it's getting closer to an iPhone 8, and the technology just gets better. And you heard Kurt say he's getting brand new collars in November. That will happen as technology changes. So 2 of these actually provide a subscription style. That's Halter and Vence. The other 2, you purchase the product. And once you purchase the product, that's your product. In my view, my struggle is with updates. If you own a product, they have to update it internally, and they do. With the subscription, for us too, we're gonna get 400 new collars this winter on the vents because they're updating the technology. It costs us nothing. It's a subscription style. You basically pay for it every year is your cost. And so that's kind of how they work. I've used all of them except for No Fence. I think Gallagher and Halter, they came over here when they were ready to come over here. They started in New Zealand, and so when their products came here, they've been testing it for probably 8 or 9 years in a different country. Vents really worked on it here, and so we went through these hiccups with Vents as they've changed. And so some use cellular, some use the low-on tower. Vent uses the low-on tower. Gallagher has both. I think only Gallagher right now has the potential eventually to use satellite. I think they're all going to get this satellite at some time. Only Vents uses a battery. The other three use solar. And you say, well, then why would you use a battery? Well, I can tell you now, with No Fence this year, they've had problems keeping their solar powerful enough to keep the batteries working. Solar's great, but it still has to charge a battery. And right now, Halter's been good at it. Same with Gallagher. No Fence is struggling this year because they can't keep them hot enough. If they don't keep them hot enough, then you have to go out there and take the collar off and put a new one on. For those of you who ranch, working cattle is not an easy job. If you have excess facilities, it's great. If you don't, what happens is when a battery goes dead with Vents, or you have a solar system not working very well like No Fence, they just stay out there and they don't have a charge. So you have these animals that aren't working as effectively. So I'm going to show you how they work. So this is an experiment we did looking at virtual fence, which is the top. We then tested it with an auto gate. Almost all of you who use rotational grazing have used the manual one, just a poly wire. You roll it up, you roll it out, roll it up, roll it up, compared to continuous grazing. And so you can see, this takes a little while to kick in. So you can see how they kind of work. So if you watch the virtual fence one on the top, that's the first line they're all on. Here, your bottom one's your continuous grazing. They have free access. And we move these fences about every 5 to 7 days. So what you're looking for are animals that aren't in their zone. So once in a while, you'll see some pop out. Those are escapes. And our goal is to look at efficiency. Also, we want to look at efficacy and the value of strip grazing. So you can watch how this goes through. You can see the escapes in there. You can see the ones that stay in. That's kind of what you're trying to do is reduce the escapes in the herd. I'm going to guarantee you this today. You cannot use virtual fence without a boundary fence because some are going to get out. I don't care what product you have. Some are going to get out. And so you always have a border fence in place, which we do as well. So the efficacy question comes to us, how well do they stay in? And this is just 4 different animals at Fargo. You can see the animal number in the top. That's 1011.9. Here's 1311.1. There's 21L7, and then there's 79 in the bottom. 3 out of the 4 never got out. It's always a problem child that gives you the issue. So this one over here, 13L, the red zone means that animal is out of the strip. Whenever you see red, that animal is out of the strip. Look at these 3 here. They were never out of the strip. This one here decided she got out. She stayed out. She come in. She got out, stayed in. And then eventually on October 30th, Halloween Day, she stayed in after that. I don't know, something scared the heck out of her, but then she stayed in. It's the efficacy that drives the success of a system. And we find this at Streeter. It's always 1 or 2 animals. And I saw this in 2023. It was always 1 cow. She'd be out at the gate. I'd get mad. Go call Tim, because I'm not going to grab a forwarder and chase that cow in. I'd call my herdsman. He'd go push her in. And an hour later, she's back out. It's always 1 or 2. And it comes down to you could actually use this system as a way if you're going to keep virtual fence in the system, you can call animals based on effectiveness or efficiency of the animal staying in. Our data shows 93% of the time, the cows are always in. And it's 1 or 2 that's driving the 7% that are out. And so that kind of gets to the efficacy of the trials. What I thought would happen was we'd get a creep grazing effect on these cows. So we call her brood cows with calves on their side. We'll do heifers. And this year we're working on Blackleg Ranch with 2-year-old heifers to see if they're different in species or ages of class. We also do not do calves because they'll grow into those collars, which means you got to bring them in and change the collar size. We also don't do bulls. And if I'm going to do bulls, I'm going to do 701X on my bulls. I can track those bulls. They're mounting without having to have a collar on their neck to get shocked when they're chasing the cow. So you can use multiple technologies to use. But I would probably, like you said, Kurt, I would never put a collar on a bull because I don't want him not doing his job. But I would do 701X on my bulls. And we do also do 701X on 3 of our herds. And we've been doing them for 2 years as well. We've also tested, someone mentioned this morning, the scales, the water scales. You can get weight of your cattle on pasture. We've done the water scales. And Gallagher just came out with one that actually uses scales with creek feed or mineral feeders. So you can actually track performance on pasture with the water scales or the creek scales. The problem is they're really expensive. The Gallagher ones were right around $12,000 for one scale. Now, that sounds like a lot of money, but with today's cattle prices, if I can market my cattle based on are they reaching their optimum weight for performance on pasture, I can track that on pasture and I can say, okay, I've reached my maximum weight. I can then pull those calves off or pull those yearlings off in particular and market those accordingly. Because if you can keep them on pasture for another month and they don't gain any weight, doesn't do you a whole lot of good. So the scales do have value. You have to find out where they fit in your herd. And if I'm running grass cattle, I think the scales have a lot of potential. So we did look at calf performance, and over 2 years, we did not get a benefit of performance on those calves using virtual fencing. Our virtual fencing would be our very first, the green data, our patch burn grazings yellow, our rotational grazings are blue, season-long grazings are red. And I love Daryl's answer this morning. If you want to maximize performance on pasture, you do not rotational graze. You do not intensively graze. Cows will not perform better the more you push them. Your return is in pounds of beef per acre. I can make more money with rotational grazing, bar none, but I'm not going to maximize performance with rotational grazing. We also did not maximize performance with virtual fencing, even though those calves had free access to the pasture. And we also find that as those calves move away, as they get to be about 4 or 5 months of age, they move farther from the cow. It also forces that cow to all of a sudden, she's pushing that virtual fence. The virtual fence, you train them based on sound, not on shock. They learn the sound. That's when they turn. Halter's the only one that has directional turning, which is pretty cool. Gallagher's is a little different in that they actually have a stimulus shock right away. The other two don't. It's a stimulus, then they go far enough, they get a shock. So we had a virtual fence tour 2 weeks ago, and I was a little worried. We walked into that pasture and we pushed all those heifers to the backside of that pasture, and they got closer and closer to the virtual fence. And I'm like, if that keeps them in with 50 people chasing 10 heifers down a pasture, they got to the sound. You could hear them beeping. They stopped. We walked into the cows, and we kind of want to look at them. They never went through they never went through the sound barrier. And I'm like, that was a really good demonstration. I patted myself on the back and I walked away. So when they work, they work. And I think it comes down to effective training of those animals. The better you train them through the process, the better they learn the sound cues. And they only have to get shocked once. It's just like a really good hot wire. If they get shocked once, they take a while to test it again. And it's no different with virtual fencing. So I do think the cow-calves, we got more escapes with the cows. We had much less escapes with the heifers. And on Blackleg Ranch, where we ran 2-year-old heifers that didn't have calves on their side, they also respected the fence really well. The nice thing about vents is they do have the exclusion option. So we can build a border fence, and we can rotate them through and create exclusions within a pasture if we want to keep them out of a wetland or we want to keep them out of trees. You can create those exclusions. Not all of them give you that feature. I think all of them are going to get better with the features with time. It's just like anything else, they'll get better and better. So calf performance, we didn't see a bump in calf performance. Everyone asks us the cost. What does it cost for virtual fencing? And Kurt said it right. There's a cost to virtual fencing. And right now, it's a bit expensive. It's also a bit expensive for 701X tags. They all have to come down to be affordable. When the cattle prices is good, you can spend a little more money on technology. When the cattle prices were like they were in 2020 and 2021, it's tough to look at technology. So we did like what Kurt did. We went 100 cows, amortized over 5 years, and they're almost always the same, give or take $70 to $80 per head on the technique. So only 2 of them have base stations. as a base station. That's not right. Halter as a base station is now $4,500 a station. Vences is $10,000 for a station. And the E-Shepherd, you can go with a base station or not. If you have the base station type, it's $5,000. E-Shepherd is $250 upfront cost. No fence is $289 for, I believe it's sheep or cows, $199 for sheep. And then there's a subscription cost. You can see those as well. Vents does not have a subscription cost. The rest all have a subscription cost tied to them. And so you can see in the end, right now they're all about the same price, 75 to 80 bucks to run these technology. The beauty of what I think they're going to have to get to is kind of this 701X cross on the virtual fence. So you can get a little more animal data with your virtual fence. 701X already gives you that performance data, gives you mounting data, gives you estrus cycling, although I think it still needs some work. Gives you all this stuff that the virtual fence does not. But virtual fence gives you a fence. It also gives you GPS coordinates so you know where your animals are at. I had a producer in Colorado, went out to round up his cattle, and all he did was go on his computer, found out where his animals were at. His wife monitored it from the house. He went on a horseback, rounded them up, and he couldn't find one. And his wife called him, they had cell coverage obviously, said that heifer is over this fence or over this draw, and he went and found her. So the GPS option is great for finding your locating your animals. They all produce heat maps of some sort, so you can see how they graze. I think most of them have a back fence to them, so you can actually back fence and rotate. That's what we do on Blackleg Ranch, is we actually do a rotation system. So we back fence, move, and come back through it. I don't know if Halter's quite there yet, but they are to a degree. Yeah, they do. They back fence. So does Gallagher. I don't know no fence very much. So that's kind of where the costs are at. It's just a matter of where you think it fits in your operation. I've been asked this question now for 2 years. Is it the future of grazing management? And I think it is going to be a future for producers, especially if you have big country. And instead of, I've put a lot of manual fence up. It takes a lot of work and it's expensive to build fence. If I can go out there and take a 6,000 acre pasture and quarter it out with a virtual fence to save money in terms of labor and material costs, I can use virtual fence to move those cattle. The limiting factor then comes down to water. So we always teach you, build your systems based on your water. Virtual fencing is no different. You build your fences based on the costs, and you can eliminate all those costs with virtual fencing, knowing that it's not 100% effective. It's still going to have some that get out. The reason I think it's also going to be effective is NRCS started it in 2025. They actually brought it out in 2024, but was implemented this year. It was part of their EQIP program. You can actually get funding within their 528 grazing program. The difference with the 528 is it pays by the acre. With virtual fence, it pays by the collar. And so they're used to practice 382 up front. That gets you the tower. That gets you the upfront equipment costs. But as a producer, you go into the second year with 528. If you got in it this year, it was a heck of a deal. They were covering like 90% of the cost. That won't be true next year. They figured out it was a really good deal in 2025. But it will be as an option for them to use, and it's going to be driven mainly on conservation. That's, NRCS is a conservation program. They're building these to be more conservation friendly while improving your grazing management strategies. So I do think it's going to be the future of grazing management. Will it work in strip grazing? Absolutely works. It's not cost effective. I can still go out there and move a manual fence in 5 minutes. Cost me that wire one time, I just move them. Virtual fence is nice. Go on the computer, you put in your grazing plans like you want, you move them down, but you're paying a lot of money up front to graze 40 acres, 50 acres. So it will, to me, cost drive some of that. That's all I had for PowerPoint. I want to leave time for questions. So I'm going to sit back down. I'm going to have Steve come up next, and we'll go from there.
Okay, what you're going to see here is kind of a hybrid presentation. I've been running around the country giving various versions of this. I'm hoping to give it this winter at the National Association of Conservation Districts annual meeting in San Antonio. So we're working up a full hour presentation, which will have a lot more than this. This started as the presentation I gave last year at the State Soil Conservation Association. Trying to cut it down to 20 minutes. So here we go. Okay, a little bit about my family. There they are. All right, there you got my daughter Sonia, who's now a veterinarian. Her fiance Scott will be a dentist. Me and my wife Joellen, Jimmy and Abby Joe live next door. They both work full time, but they are getting into the farm. And this is Einer. Okay, I'm going to kind of skip a lot of the how we got here stuff, but this is one of the scenarios that we wanted to work on. This is a pasture near Willow City, North Dakota, and it's flat, very productive, beautiful land, but it's got all these creeks running through it, and nobody wants to farm it because it's too difficult, but it's very productive. But it's almost impossible to fence. Those creeks are deep, and if you put up a fence, the cows will swim under it. If the water comes up, washes the fence down, then they go out. So we tried poly wire and stuff fence here last year, and we got that far, and they just knocked it down constantly. Now our other place that we're putting this in at is a waterfowl production area which has lots of water. Water's not a problem. It's currently split into 6 pieces, and we've been grazing this area for several years by moving them about once every 2 weeks throughout that system. This is what it usually looks like when we move. That's my dog Wiley. He sits on it. So very good grass management there. It's just not enough moves. So we've been working on grazing management for several years now, with different kinds of fences and cross fences, and a lot of labor and a lot of effort and a lot of time. Access to water, as was mentioned, is a tough business. So we concentrated on areas that we have adequate water. And we had several miles of perimeter fence. Absolutely crucial to this deal. Because most of this is around cropland that we would love to use in the winter, but fences in the winter are tough to deal with. As an example, we've been doing a lot of bale grazing, a lot of we feed out on the pasture. But I don't like to be putting in stepping posts in the snow. This is an example of what we've been doing for a lot of years, using the bale processor to target where the cows go. And it's worked very well. This little field right here was the most unproductive piece of land that we had when we took over the operation. It this year produced the best corn we had. It's only 7 acres. It's only 100 feet wide. You can barely get the sprayer down it. But now that's like potting soil in that area there. Another thing we've been doing, and we continue to do, is 8-10 practice through NRCS. This is a field of cover crop, 12 species or so. But we wanted a way to graze it. I don't just want to turn them in there and let them have the whole thing. We want to stage it. We got our collars. I learned about virtual fencing in Kansas in the summer of 2024. We were visiting the Tall Grass Prairie National Grasslands, and the Mushrush family has a lease there. And so Chris Mushrush showed us the Vence collars, and he showed us the lines in the grass in the prairie where he had moved his cattle. Like, man, that's a great idea. So we started looking into virtual fences, and we were hosting a stop on the North Dakota Angus Tour last year. And I thought, man, wouldn't it be fun to be able to show that? So we called Gallagher, and they sent us a box of collars. And this is Jarvis. He was a spare backup bull. We raise Angus cattle. And so he was sitting in the feedlot looking kind of lonely. So we put a collar on him. Now he really looked lonely. Oh, you should have seen it when we put him on. So anyway, so we had the tour. We had the extra 3 there to view. We talked about it. We had Dan Dukart from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service was at our place, and he gave a little talk about collars and fencing and grass management and water. It was a very well received. And then we watched Jarvis. So this is our first animal with a GPS collar, and this is what he did for the first couple days. And keep in mind, there was a herd of cattle with him, and he was confined to the orange dotted line. So whenever the cattle would go over to the east there, or the west, he would get zapped a lot. But it trained him eventually. So this was our first time tracking an animal with a collar on it. Then we decided to buy some. We chose the Gallagher because there's no base station required. They're solar powered. They promise 7 to 10 year battery life. Pretty reasonable price. And no subscription fee. There is a $2 a month sell fee to connect to the collars. And these are the advantages that we were looking for. Labor savings. Our crew doesn't like to drive 25 miles at dusk every day because that's when it happens. 7:30 at night, when my landlord goes for his Bruce cruise, he calls me and says, "Oh, there's a cow out." So you jump in the pickup, you drive all the way over there to put this one darn cow back in, who crawled under the fence, through the creek, and out. Really gets old. Knowing where those cows are is just absolutely a godsend. As you've seen on the other ones, I mean, a little blue dot shows up, so you know exactly where old 357 is. Cost savings, I think they're significant over any other methods. Virtual fences are not encumbered by cattails, snow, rain, water. You can draw a virtual fence anywhere, and the cow will get to that and stop and turn back. We're hoping to get better use of forage. That remains to be seen. Will it work? Well, we got cows like that. Quite a few of them. I think they're range cows. Will they last in the field? Will the cattle respect them? Will the product be supported? So we got 64 of these things, hung them on a fence to charge. And then we start putting them on. The processing system, incidentally, that was the one of the door prizes at the 2019 National Angus Association convention in Reno, Nevada. And I was one of the winning door. So I put my ticket in the hat, and I won a $35,000 system. This is pretty cool. It came with an EID reader and a true test scale. So when my cows come through, every single one's got a button in their ear. As they enter the chute, push the button, cow shows up on the scale with her weight and all the printing data. This one we had reattached. You can see it's got some snow on it. Shaggy old cow. So we got these collars in December or January last year with the intent of grazing through the winter on that forage crop that I showed you. And so there it is, that field there along the west side, those little strips there, that's all standing forage. And the plan was to start down here in the corner by the water and just slowly expose a little bit every day or every other day. And in the rest of the area up above, we put bales out, unrolled them, or not unrolled them, but unwrapped them. And the plan was to get going. And here they are, entering the field for the first time. We pushed them all the way down to the south end. We put out bales, took all the bales that were in there. We didn't move the hay. We just stood the bales up where they were made. Cut down on transport costs and labor costs, because we did it in November. Pulling the swine off in November is a lot more fun than in February. The water was all at the south end, along with the mineral tubs, so they always had to come back. But in winter grazing, that's all right, because you're not really hurting anything to not have a back fence. But not all cows conform. So in that first batch, it was the middle of the winter. We turned them out there. We did some training at home, but we got 15 collars that didn't charge up. So those are the ones you saw hanging on the fence. As soon as they were charged, we put them on some animals and threw them in there. And they didn't get trained, and it was a little rough. As you can see, this one, she worked at it. She got up to the line, and she'd get beeped, and she'd get beeped, and she'd get zapped. And finally, she pushed through. And throughout this test, in the winter, we had no loss of battery life, no loss of signal. Gallagher was using us as a test bed for winter grazing. So the little batch of green, that was my hired man, took the bale grazing thing seriously. He put them about 10 feet apart for 100 feet down that field. So we had bales up. Anyway, so that was a management mistake, all that green dots, because that's where they laid every day. That's where they went all the time. But anyway, Gallagher monitored that. At the end of the test, this was probably early March, we brought the cows home. The collars have been turned off. This is just showing the area that we used during that test. There you can see some of the boundaries inside. And then there's a heat map of what they did for that period of time. All the little green dots, red dots, you can see down there where the bales were. They really hit that hard. All the little green dots around the pasture are all where individual bales were laid. On the rest of the purple stuff, that was just where they went and grazed. They grazed everything except the cattails and the actual water in the middle. There wasn't much there. But we got pretty good use out of this. 200 acres for 2 months. Didn't have to do a thing other than sit in the house and where's that 513 cow at right now? I considered that a good success. We took our winter feeding completely out. We still had cattle in the feedlot at home, but we didn't have to feed cows. And there's the end of the test. The bale bases are now part of the pasture. Of course, they laid in them a lot, but that's all right. There's that cover crop that we showed you in the fall. It was nice and green. It's all mashed down now. It was planted to corn last year or this summer, and it did okay. But this area happens to have lots of trees, perfect winter cover. I mean, these cows would be good there all winter long if we chose to leave them there. We may be moving calving a little farther so we can take more advantage of it. At calving, we had them restricted to this area around the barn so that we can weigh because we're a registered Angus outfit. Every calf, we take it in the barn, tag it, weigh it, process it, turn it back out. Then we would turn them north into that slough area, and we had a virtual fence around that too. So they worked pretty well. Now this is our master plan. This is all the grazing systems we have within about a mile of our house, with the existing fencing that's in place. The white lines are all perimeter fence. So we put collars on. We had 64 collars. We did 3 herds of roughly 20 apiece, and we had 3 left over that we used on some troublemakers that liked to get out. So we made sure they got collars. We have a couple herds that have no collars, one of which was in that little system that sticks up there. That's all brand new 4-wire barbed fence. So we didn't feel we needed collars on those cattle because we have them pretty much under control. And the Herefords, by the way, too. I'm an Angus breeder, and we have a herd of Herefords. We also had no collars on our heifers, and that turned out to be kind of a pain in the rear during the middle of the summer, but that could be another story. Here we'll go back to the Willow Creek pastures, which I showed you earlier. This is how we split them up. There's roughly 14 cells per pasture. These are about 60 to 80 acre pastures. So these were, they're 25 miles from home. This is where you don't want to go every evening when you're just sitting down to happy hour and the phone rings and the landlord says, get your butt over here. And the farmland around here is excellent. I mean, it's all 14-foot tall corn, and these guys do not want cows in their field. This is actually the end of, this is where they are right now. We've worked our way all the way around the pastures, and the cows are currently in the northwest corners of both those pastures. Okay, here's how we do a move. So the cows in this example are sitting in this one to the south, and the heat map tells me they're pretty much done with that pasture. So I just make it twice as big. Turn that on, and they move. Fresh grass is very tempting. As soon as that virtual fence goes down, they always walk towards the new grass. And if they don't get beeped, they keep walking. So the next day, after we notice they've all moved, then we put a fence around where they're at now, and we turn off the old one. Very simple. This has worked absolutely flawlessly, with 1 or 2 exceptions. Now, this is the fish and wildlife area that I showed you earlier. There are 6 existing fences in there, and we broke them up into 30-some virtual fences. And in this case, we're basically surrounding those sloughs. So I don't want to go put water out here. I don't own the land. It's Fish and Wildlife Service, but I can virtual graze it very easy just by including a little corner of water in every virtual fence. So these were done, like it says there are 3 to 6 acres. Some of them were as small as 2 acres, some as big as 10. But we worked through it. All took us all summer long to get through all that. And that herd is currently sitting down here in the corner on our land. At least I hope they're still there. But anyway, this was made utilization of this stuff really, really nice, because we were our contract said to graze from 6 days to 10 days per cell. And we broke each cell up into 15 pieces or 10 pieces or something. So we actually exceeded, I think, the expectations of the Fish and Wildlife Service by splitting it into all these little spots. And Dane Bicey and his team were there one day and took drone pictures of our cattle out in this pasture. I didn't see the results of that though yet. But anyway, so Dane's been there, and he can attest to the fact that the collars work, because we watched them come out from behind that little slough there. And there was a couple cows in this pasture that didn't have tags on, or didn't have collars on, and they walked right through the barrier. There's no barrier to them, right? And the ones that that were following along behind, you could just see them. It stops them immediately, unless they're really stubborn. So anyway, that's what we did on that area. And as you can see, it's attached to the rest of our farm, so we just move them into the next cell and go. Highlights. After the winter feeding was over, Gallagher blamed the number of escapees in the winter on hair condition and dry weather, saying some of those cows just were really hairy, or they just weren't getting enough of a shock. Well, the escapes did go down dramatically during the summer grazing period. We had very, very few. This is one of them. And look how she tested that fence. She walked right down it, just getting beeped and beeped and beeped and beeped. And finally, she just toughed it out and pushed through. Kevin, that's going to happen. There are some, and in some cases, this one would have been later in the season. It could have been her calf was over there, and she just insisted on going with it. That's what I attribute most of these escapes to during the summer, because she really tried. She was bound and determined to leave. Heat maps are a great thing. We use this heavily because I did not drive over to see these cows very often, maybe 3 times all summer long, but I look at them every single day, and I look at the heat map to see if they've grazed that area down much or not, and if they have, we open a new area. As you move the cows, there's a running record of everything you've done, so we can go back to our Fish and Wildlife lease and just and document everything. Issues. The cell communications went down a couple times. So here's a cow. She didn't get buzzed as she went out to the south. She went all over the place. Then she went back through, didn't get buzzed, got all the way up there, and then the cell phone kicked back on and said, beeped her real hard a couple times. Those things just happen. We had a handful of callers that quit, like 5 out of 64. They're sending replacements. We've had one battery go dead. Well, it's warning me that it's going to. Touched on it earlier. Fitment. We weren't very fussy about the fitting on the cow. So our younger cattle got the same adjustment as the older cows. So these second calvers, a lot of them got a little lump on their jaw with that thing hitting them in the mouth. Gallagher has issued a bulletin saying, check this. So when we go through and preg check, we're going to readjust all those collars. Overall impression is I liked the vacation. Reliability was great. Worked as advertised. Customer service is very good. Labor savings are huge. Just, you can't put in a price on that. So here we are on our way to Milwaukee to another meeting, and I'm watching the cows every day, but I'm not on the farm. Cost is competitive with temporary fencing, polywire step-in posts, and it makes fencing fun again. And we'd like to acknowledge the Fish and Wildlife Service, the Heritage Fund, the North Dakota Resources Trust, NRCS, and our next generation. And that's it.
At this time, are there any questions for our panelists?
I guess
It's a good thing you're close here, Cody. That I know how long you work.
My question is on the halter, or I guess any of them. When you're working cattle through a chute, have you ever had them get damaged? Because it looks like, I mean, when we catch cattle, things happen, right?
I'll take it from our experience with halter. We damaged one collar while putting it on. The cow did a pretty wild head swing on us, and it smashed the covering on the solar panel, but it was still functional. But we did take it off and replace it. The collar still worked, but that's the only thing we've had happen to date.
Have they been run through the chute multiple times after collaring, or has collaring been the only time they've been through the chute?
No, we've brought them through the chute, and as I mentioned, we went through and readjusted collars one time, and they've been through the chute multiple times. Yep.
I was going to say where I've seen some damages on the solar panels, whether it's Gallagher or Alter, they can crack. They still work though. Vents, you don't have anything to break, so you don't see any problem with vents. And no fence, I haven't just had enough seen on no fence, but they're pretty sturdy.
I've been real impressed with the reliability of the actual physical machine. Last year in the feedlot, when we brought the cows home for calving, we had a couple of them catching bale feeders and in feed rails, and it would catch it and it would just tear that little plastic cheap attachment off at the top. So Gallagher sent me a box of replacement parts, and we fixed 2 or 3 of them so far. The only other thing we've had fall apart was a little screw that held the chain onto the device. I actually sent my hired man out thinking that was a dead cow, because it reported her still or down. God, crap, because I had one the week before, and you just walk right out there and there's a collar, no cow. But anyway, they've been very reliable. I do have the one right now that says it's warning me that the battery's in backup or battery saver mode, and I don't know. When we bring her home here in a month, we'll find out whether that's cracked or broken or it's just shot inside. I don't know, but Gallagher did send replacement collars for those.
You can just repeat Carol, but you have to put those cows through a training regimen before you turn them on pasture.
Are you guys training the cows? I was going to ask that anyway.
So all of the virtual fence technology you should train. They all have a set training protocol, and they're different from each other. Fence is the 5-day training system where you actually start with the sound. You start with the border fence, and at day 4 we put in an actual virtual fence, because remember you're training them to respond to the sound cue, not the shot cue. Gallagher's is a different protocol. Halter's a different protocol. No fence is different. They all need to be trained. If you do a crappy job of training, you're going to have crappy results as well. But they all figure it out eventually.
We went through on the first group, and we did a few days where we put them inside of about a 5-acre pasture with hard fence, and then subdivided it. And they went through a little bit of a training process on that. The second group, I'll be honest with you, we just turned them out, and they just took fine on ours.
What's the range on those towers? Like, is it mile? How many towers do you have to have out at Central Grasslands, Kevin?
So with vents, it's about 6 to 7 miles. So the radius, I thought Vents has the best one for radiance. You do get these valleys and rises, and so if a cow gets down into a valley, it still records her. The GPS works still, but it will not record a shock. So you want to put your fences in a precision area so they always will hit a top spot. So I think halters is less than that, but you have halter.
Yeah, and the halter ones, we're in a pretty rolling and some big drainages and stuff. So we've got 2 towers that are covering, they probably would effectively cover about 3,000 acres, I suppose. We don't have all that land, but that's about what they would cover in our area.
behind you, Derrick.
So, question for Kurt, I guess. On the or anybody on this, those towers. If you let's say you were able to pick up 1,000 acres of your neighbor's stuff, could you move that tower, or would you need to purchase another tower for that added area?
The tower, certainly you could take it down and move it. We would probably look hard at that. I mean, it's a value of our time. I can put it up once, or I can take it and move it. But yeah, there's nothing. It's just powered by solar, right? So there's nothing constraining it to that exact spot.
Ours are on, now I'm going to tell you this, but they say it breaks the warranty. Ours are on a portable trailer. So we move ours, like from Dickinson, they go to Streeter. So we move ours around, but I think Vince is working on trying to make them so they're still warranted. But once you move them, they say they're no longer warranted. We haven't had any issue. We move ours all over the place because it's much easier for us to make them mobile.
Can you put a prescription in your moves? So like every 4 hours or something into the future? Do all the companies do that?
Yeah, I mean, like for us, we'll put a rotation in place and we'll set it up for if it's hours or days. Ours are usually days, so we'll set it up for midnight on day whatever. It turns off. It turns off, and new one goes on. And then if you want to do a back fence, we'll set that up as well. And you can use a back fence to actually move the cows as well, so you can create it all on the computer. You know, if you're not technically savvy, like I'm not, I have people. There is some technology skills you have here. And when I give this talk, and I give a lot of these talks, I always say, you better have someone in your group who's technically savvy, and it's not good for the old fart like me. Look at all this, well, not you, although I remember Derrick at range camp. So, you know, we're not younger generation, and it's not that hard. The technology's gotten to the point where anybody can use it. Just takes the time. Not me. I just put a grad student on it. I cheat.
Maybe Kurt explain. I know some of the, I've researched them all, but I think Halter has a counterbalance system, how it hangs different than the Vents or No Fence or Gallagher.
Okay, I have a two-part question. One, does Halter have the heat-seeking app in theirs too, or is it just moving fence? And then the second question is for the 701 tags, and which readers are you guys using? Are you using Allflex or Gallagher's for the wand, or just readers on the chute?
My hearing isn't as good. Did you ask on the Halter about heat detection? So on the beef cattle, so obviously in New Zealand they're doing dairy herds, and dairy herds are relatively homogeneous with the breeds. U.S. beef cows are very diverse, and so today that's not offered on the beef side. But I do believe, in fact, I know there's a couple, 2-3 people here from Halter that they could probably answer you specifically. I don't think heat is available at the moment, anyways. Yep.
On the cow that got out, is it hot going back in for the cow? Or it's just hot one way? So if the cow wants back in, they can get back in?
It's a one-way street. And on the heat question, none of the virtual fences have that technology yet. But they're all, like Vents in particular was bought up by Merck. And Merck's plan is to put that technology in their collars. 701X has it now. 701 is really early on the heat detection. And they're really early on the calving yeast detection. We do 701X for 2 years now. And I think 701X is ahead of the rest of them. The problem is 701X doesn't use virtual fence. You know, so.
Reader do you flip grab a reader to the Gallagher reader for the Olympic City type, or are you using all that?
So with the 701X, when we first bought, they built their own wand. They were trying to use True Test or DATMARS so they could integrate it with their weighing system, but the companies weren't giving up their secrets, so they didn't want to play. So 701X built their own wand. So it'll read any tag or any button tag. And then it's integrated into their app as of right now until everybody wants to play fair. So
I've got a True Test reader that I won with my system, and it'll read any EID tag.
I think both Gallagher and the halters are set up that way. I'm not sure about Ben's.
How often does the 701X tag communicate data? Like, how often is it shipping data?
I don't remember the exact, but I know like when I had my tags on in the summer or this last summer, I have a check-in time of 8:00 in the morning. And then I think it's every 4 hours, I believe, it'll link up with the satellite and then send it back. It's not exactly like it's right here, right now, and it's right here in 5 minutes. There's the delay. And it's like with all technology, it's getting better and better all the time. One thing I failed to mention was it updates constantly. Anytime they put out a new version or new stuff, it automatically goes to the tag and is updated. Like I can call the office in Fargo, and they can link right to my tag and fix something if they need to, or within 24 hours. But that's all technology now. I mean, it evolves and changes constantly.
Any other questions for the folks? Anyone? Oh, go ahead.
I guess I asked Kurt about the counterbalance system.
So the solar panels up on top, and then it's just got this counterweight down below to keep the solar panels up on top of the neck. So that's the counterbalance.
I will say the rubbing that you saw in the Gallagher product would not happen if it was actually attached right. If it was tight like it's supposed to be, you don't see that. So it is important to attach the collar at the right, tightness, but not too tight, and it eliminates that roughing. If it's loose, it's going to move like this. Even the halter that's got a counter, if it's too low, it's going to sway. That's going to get rubbing. So if you put them on right, and I've seen it in all the products, there's usually no problems with them if they're put on right. Not that you're not doing it right.
Well, by the time we noticed that, it was August, I think, because I don't go look at my cows all that often. That herd I actually do because they're a mile and a half away. But I thought it was just, at first I just thought it was, foxtail or something or other, because a couple cows had the big lump, like they've eaten something and it's gone through their cheek. And I thought, well, okay, that's a couple of them. But then I started looking around and they came to the water tank, and there was like 5 or 6 of them. I'm like, no, this is. So I started taking pictures, and then I asked them. They said, "Oh yeah, you got them on too loose." So that's my fault, because we, you get in a rhythm, and the next cow comes through. We've counted out 6 links on each side. Stick that on, and away she goes. And never really felt whether that was the appropriate or not. That was just kind of the average, and that's what we did. So next year, this fall, November 24th, when it's come out, we're going to run the cows through and adjust them all.